Hello, welcome to Currency. I am here for this, and I was sick the last couple of days, and so I guess I'm a little out of it, but like I was sick with a bug or food poisoning or something, and I wanted to go over some news and notes about this episode, which is that first of all, at the end of the last episode, I said something about like Jesus is kind of like a big fart. And I just meant like it's kind of the same always and forever, like a person's relationship to farting in life. I wanted to explain at the time, I forgot, like I know that my podcast is also, you could also describe that as a big fart. What I do on here, like the whole, like, everything you're saying is just a big fart. My position is that it's better than what a pastor has to say because they are more farty. They have a more farty message than me because it is not as interesting. I'm just trying to take a position of like I'm more interesting than a pastor. Because I'm like an anti-pastor, but there's no anti-pastoralism. Everybody lets pastors just run free. There's nobody out here like me who's like discriminating against pastors specifically, seriously. We're like, and like, how could you not want more? How could you not want more of this? I couldn't fathom that you wouldn't want more, but I'm just thinking like, what if I start doing this every day, like Joe Rogan style? What if I don't even know if I have that much information that I could do that like, but I mean, I don't know if I feel like, I don't know if that's what people need necessarily, but a part of me thinks that if I do have it, that it's really like, I'm just denying people my gift to not share more and more and more of these words, but the gift of grift is what I like to call it. You can't spell grift without gift. And it's a gift that I have, but I'm just trying to figure out, I don't even know how much info I have. I'm going to have to figure out more info about how much info I have in order to figure out if I can do more episodes. So I'm probably going to have to devote some resources towards, I'm going to have to gather some intel within myself to figure out how much info I have so that I can deliver that info, and then figure out optimal ways to mobilize info delivery to people just in an efficient way to gather all that info. But I need to figure out if I have enough to mobilize and the info and gain support as well. I'll have to get my lobbyists together, my lobbying crew. And another news and notes I wanted to say was that I publicized, when I publicized the last episode on Facebook, I made a comment that I was like, I'm not the Antichrist anymore. It was a bad run, but at least I didn't learn anything. And I said that to be like, look, I did, it's like I did something wrong, so to speak, or it's like I'm going back on what I said, but I didn't learn anything. I said that basically because the phrase "I didn't learn anything" sounds funny, and then once I put it out, I realized like more about why it's funny to me, or like why I would say that, and I'm saying it because it's a joke, because I like the idea that somebody would read that and think that I was trying to look like a badass who like didn't learn anything, because everybody knows that you're supposed to learn from your mistakes or whatever. And the thing is that, of course, I learned something from saying I'm the Antichrist, because you learn something every time you do anything, because learning is ubiquitous. That's what I'm saying. Ultimately, that's the joke. I guess, I mean, I figure people should understand I'm not being completely literal. I don't figure they would get to the bottom of me, like the root of that I'm explaining now, what it actually is. Because what it actually is like, people say you learn something. You learn more when you lose from your losses than from when you win. And I feel like the real truth of that statement is that you learn something every time you do anything, which is like, this is evident. Of course I learned something. How could I say something as aggrandizing as I'm the Antichrist and not learn anything? That would be impossible. I just like the idea that somebody would read that and get angry because they think learning has to happen in a certain way. They want to be controlling over that, because people are kind of controlling over learning when you think about it, given that it's ubiquitous, because it just like happens no matter what. It's not really expensive. It just kind of happens. Information is all over. Information is all over. But I wanted to explain my position about when I said I was the Antichrist. I know I keep talking about it, but I do that with any topic. I'll just keep talking about it. But I realize that when I say whatever, I'm the Antichrist, that people don't know what I mean. I should explain my position, which is that I'm not against Christians, as much as it might sound that I am. It's not exactly that. It's just kind of like, this is something I'm left with as a result of my Christian background, is like all of these things to say. It's not really like I'm trying to get revenge. It's just like, this is what I have. This is what I'm left with. And I decided to talk about it for some reason, and talk about it for a long time, but it's kind of a position like that I'm taking where I can get the negative side of Christianity, because there's no anti-pastoralism. But it's more like it's not my fantasy being the Antichrist. It's a fantasy of the 32% of the world are Christians. They call themselves that. They base their whatever on the Bible. However many people base, some of them will devote their soul to something that the Bible says. Like Christians generally, of the they're 32% of all people in the world, and a high percentage of those, well, I guess not like Mormons, but like a big percentage of those base their faith on the Bible or whatever, or at least a lot of people do, even if it's not the whole 32% of the world. And so it's somebody else's fantasy. I'm just kind of like the Walt Disney who wants to make it public, because Christian church is all private. And not that I would be that. It's impossible that I would be that. It's a joke. I'm just like, there's nobody else who is, so I'm like, oh, I'll be the stand-in guy because they're always clamoring for it, or they're always saying like, oh, we're about to find it. So I'm just like, I'll be the stand-in guy until you find somebody else. But honestly, so I'm like, I say it's a joke. Like it is. It's a joke and it is serious. I do a lot of things that way where it's both of them, but like I'm really bipolar in that way, where it's like I'm kind of two-sided about things, or like I like to get both sides. So basically, like, it's impossible that I would be that. And then it's like I went home and ran into my family, and they seemed to take it like pretty seriously, and that was surprising to me. Just kind of the reaction I got from them, and from friends I have, and other Christian people I know in general. It's like they kind of took it seriously, and I put up an episode called Propaganda, and then I took it down and edited it, and you might have seen what I had up there that was unedited, and I was just talking about how, like, you know, if I keep saying I'm the Antichrist or whatever, even though that's like, I'm not that or anything. It's not like I don't think I'm that. It's just like nobody, because I'm not known by anyone. So it's like nobody is being that, or like somebody should, until we find the real guy or whatever, you know. And like I laid it out pretty clearly that it's just like a popularity I might not have laid it out clearly, though. It's like, my position is that the Antichrist is just a popularity contest, and whenever that comes along, if there is, and I feel like that it might be the case that that would have to come along because I believe in the decentralization of power of the story. Because right now the story is one guy, it's Christ's story. And what we should be doing is having eras for very many people rather than just one. We just got to decentralize that it's one person's story. And so it's a political thing that I'm advocating for, where we aren't. It's not a tyranny. It's not totalitarian. It's not run by one tyrant. Where we decentralize it, because it's like there would be many antichrists, because that's the opposite of Christ, because it's a decentralized thing, because it's evil. Evil is not integrated. It doesn't have integrity. Good is integrated. It's moral. It's within the law. It's within the bounds. It's within what's certain. It's like what we already know. What is good is what is collectivized. And what is bad is the way of Satan, is evil. It gets more and more disintegrated. It doesn't have any leadership. So I don't believe in Satan, which is like, I guess I should clarify these things. All of that, like satanic rituals and all of that shit. I have no idea what anybody's doing with that. I don't know why the hell somebody would want to try to talk to Satan. I don't know that that's possible. I don't think that's real. I don't think Satan is real, because evil doesn't have any leadership. That's what good is for. And that's what God is for. And God is very closely related to the word good. It's close to the word good. Evil is, Satan is a more false idea. It's just like demons are disintegrated like that. Like that's what evil is. I don't know what people like. It's really people doing satanic rituals and making it all this like scary evil shit. They're just giving a bad name to evil. The evil is stigmatized to be evil forever. And I'm advocating for like the world is run off of like a Christocracy, like politically, and I think that is not ideal, because in reality everybody has a relationship to Christ. These are the things that I mean to say when I say like I'm the Antichrist. It's just like a nominal, like we should really as a world be attempting to usher in the era where it's really like a Christian thing that I'm doing ultimately. And I explained in one of the episodes that like I kind of found out in saying I'm the Antichrist, like I make this podcast for Christians or something like that. But it's really like people need to recognize that we're all in relationship to Christ as long as it's his history. But we have this thing where it's just like the people that claim it get all of the power, and it's people wouldn't readily believe, oh, Christians have a lot of power, or they're the originators of the narration or whatever. I believe that they are right is what I'm saying, because the world is run off of a Christocracy. Like you could say, like, look at the history of America, for example. It began in 1776. America is a democracy the entire time, like politically speaking. What is the world run off of? What is the best word? What's the most preferable word, the most accurate word to describe the way that the world is run politically? You could say it's authoritarian because like it's all given over to authoritarianism. Like the people, everybody in the United Nations has all of these titles, all of these authorities that make it like, oh, we are the people with the most power, like all of these doctorates and all of this shit. That's what authoritarianism is to me. Like all of these titles that give these people authority, that you're like, oh, look at this long list of titles. They are so qualified. It's a qualificationocracy, you know, like, you know what I mean? That we're supposed to trust the experts and all of that. It's kind of how it's run. That's close. Like that would be, authoritarianism is a closer word to describe the way the world is run politically than like a democracy. because if there's like 100 countries that run off of a democracy in the world now, there's a bunch of other countries that don't do that. So like that makes it not an accurate term. But like the entire history of America is encapsulated by the history of Christ, like evidently. And so it doesn't even matter what political system and how great America was as far as the story is concerned. And maybe it's like we shouldn't even have history, is maybe what I'm saying. Like history is bad because it really makes it this thing where we're living in the past. Or like people are like, my legacy, when it's like all of that is fleeting in real life. None of that. Like, it's not a bad system. People try to get remembered within the story of Christ, ultimately, whether you're a person or a nation or a business or whatever. You have like a beginning and an ending, a birth date and an end date. But the way that we run it is like, it's like a Christocracy. And as a result of that, I'm saying it's like a tyranny, and everybody is a Christian in the world. It's just that people who are Christians are the ones that found this out. And I have a couple things here that I want to talk about. Let me make sure I don't leave anything out of the news notes. I wanted to explain my position that I don't. But anyways, like, it's, Jesus is a ghost. Like, it's not, the things I'm saying aren't that weird. Like I'm in real life, Christ isn't even here. You should be governing the entire world off of the dictates of somebody who's alive in real life. Like, that's not that crazy of an idea, especially when you look at Christianity. It's like 2 billion people around the world worshiping a ghost, essentially. He's a ghost, and he's the centralized ghost. And this is the reason why ghosts aren't allowed into the narrative. There's just a lot of shit that isn't allowed into the narrative, like UFOs, all of the paranormal. And really what I feel like I've come to the conclusion of is like the paranormal world is like the secular world almost. It's like the Christian world is the normal world. That's ethical, that's good conduct, and like everybody can agree on that. Like that's good, basically. And like you really don't, honestly, you don't get naysayers like me that discriminate against like Christianity specifically. You get general ideas from people who are angsty about Christianity, or like politicians that do some law somewhere or whatever. But like, ghosts are real. We have thousands of stories of ghosts, all different places all around the world. Doesn't matter how many stories come up of people ghosts, how many ghost investigations where they caught EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, or on their thermal reader caught disembodied, whatever, or like see full-bodied apparitions or anything, or capture them in photos, or it doesn't matter how many stories there are of this, they all don't make it into the official narrative. And then we end up with this where people are like, no, I don't believe in ghosts because that's crazy. I have no idea how that's possible when you have so many stories of ghosts. It's just because there's like, you're supposed to run off of a centralized story, and there is one of them that we're all supposed to do the thing under. But like America, beginning and ending is all encapsulated by Christ is bigger than that. So it doesn't matter, like, even though we've done all this great shit, yeah, I don't know, like, oh, what's the alternative? Like, entirely, I don't have a perfect vision for how this would work out. I'm just trying to, like, say some things about it. I'm trying to go back and forth across the line between Christian and secular to weave them together. Just say, these things shouldn't be separate. But when people get on TV, they're like, I love Jesus, and that's all about it. And they have this kind of dickish attitude about it. You know, it's just that attitude that people have. They're like, yeah, so what are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do? We love Christ. Where, I don't know. where they don't have like very many words to back it up, but they're not saying like, by the way, you have to say these 5 sentences and that'll get you into heaven. And that's what is like really separates us from the world, is that we believe we're going to heaven. You know, they believe they're going to heaven for eternity, and they're not telling that to anybody. That's not ethical. That's not right. Because they're not going to share that, because that doesn't make any sense. That would be like me saying I'm the Antichrist or something. Like really that, like if somebody went on and they're just like endlessly sharing the gospel because they're like really convicted about it. You don't get people like that that are Christian, where they're like specifically like why wouldn't there be, I don't know of any example of somebody like that, of like a real Christian who has a podcast like mine or something, where they just go on and share the gospel every time because they need people to get saved from hell. I don't know of anything like that, because it's more about protecting the secret than it is about sharing it, because the secret is what keeps the church alive. So, I mean, let's be serious. Let's be serious about this. So I can say that it's a joke or what. I mean, like it's a joke, but I couldn't make an episode titled "Not the Antichrist," I found out, because I wouldn't be able to take that seriously enough. Like the things I say on here, I'm generally like serious about them, but ghosts are real, and the only reason we can't say that there are is because we have centralized ghost that everybody is like, we need to keep it that way. I don't really know why, but it's like we're not allowed to say there's all these different ghosts, individual ones, because that's more demonic and that's evil. Evil is that it's the decentralization of things, and I'm saying we need to decentralize everything. We need to decentralize the broadcast booth in sports so that it's given over to the fans, because it's I mean, it's some sort of product of authoritarianism where we're like, we need the leader figure over all of it. So like what I'm advocating for is not that I would end up as a leader, because it's just that I would begin the movement of like decentralization of leadership. Not that I would begin it. It's just like I end up speaking of it in lofty terms, like towards myself, because I don't have other words. Because it's unfortunate that I'm this like narcissistic or whatever, or like that, the narcissism, that it is unfortunate that, like, I don't aim at narcissism. It's just that, you know, and I don't, but, I was talking about Shane Gillis in that Antichrist episode. It's possible I'm wrong. Like maybe he is really interesting for decades, and he's like the next George Carlin or something. You know, maybe I'm completely wrong about that. It's possible. It's hard to tell. But there's that commercial where there's a commercial that came out with the Bud Light commercial, where it's Post Malone and Shane Gillis. I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. I just want to talk about this commercial. The thing is that if a good commercial comes out, people treat commercials like they're the referees, like they treat referees. If the referees make one good call, everybody will be like, "Oh, why were we complaining about referees all of this time?" They're actually right every single time. All they have to do is make one good call, and then it's backed up by the broadcast booth. Broadcast booth would be like, "Wow, great call, referees." Every fucking time they make a mediocre or sub-mediocre to good, anytime they make a less than average to really great call, the broadcast booth will be like, "Oh, the refs are so fucking amazing." Anytime they make a good call, everybody's like, "Oh, you know what? The refs were never wrong about anything." That's the way people treat the refs. That's the way people treat fucking everything. Is that it's the same with like the environment of niceness. They're always deferring to niceness. So like, "Oh, meanness doesn't actually exist." Like they might get an example of what I'm doing, and it's like what you're supposed to do with my example, especially like the meaner episodes. You're just supposed to be like, "That's not real," and also, or like, he's being so mean that nobody has to allow that or listen to that. So don't believe it. It's not real. Same as like ghosts or like things that we don't understand, because it's easy. It's a lot easier and a lot more certain for people to rely on the one ghost that they know, which is Jesus. And it's really just a problem with like, we can't let paranormal things into the narrative because that'll fuck up the very simple biblical narrative. And but people treat commercials the exact same way, where they're like, it's nothing but shitty commercials. We can all agree that most of them are shit, and we're like, what is this crap? But then they make one good one, and everybody's like, oh, commercials are back, basically. We're like, actually, commercials are funny. They've always been funny. There's never been a bad one. Anytime somebody makes one good commercial. So that's just true. But the thing is that I listen to... So like my family was a little critical of it. I listen to critics. That's the thing. I listen to them. I engage with criticism. I know its value. It's something that you really have to think about. But like, you're in a pickle if you don't engage with criticism. Like, you can be trapped by criticism pretty easily, which I was explaining towards the latter half of my episode titled "Singer," which you will want to reference, where I was talking about criticism, how people are trapped by it because they're afraid of it. It's this whole thing where it's like, you have to engage with it, but like, I listen to critics, or like, you can sort of bully me. When I was in the church, I was fine with getting bullied because that's what I understood life was supposed to be. Servanthood. But now that I'm outside of the church, I don't have an incentive to do that because I don't think I'm getting all these crowns in heaven because that's what they told me or whatever to keep me in line because I wanted the awards or something. I mean, that's part of it. It's like, oh, that's the way to get eternal glory in heaven, is to be everybody's servant. Besides that, my name is Matt. People who are Matt are Matts. They're doormats. And like, I don't like anybody named Matt. When I think about it, including myself, I don't know how you can. Like, think about it. Think about the Matts that you know. Are they likable? Just to be honest. Like, I mean, I like myself. I also I love myself. I hate myself, because you should hate yourself. I was describing this in my episode titled Honesty, about the importance of hating yourself. And hate... It's just like, people named Matt, they have to act like a Matt, they have to act like a servant. It's really like their first name and then their last name. Their last name, it's like Matthew Connor is kind of just like Servant Connor. Like, everybody named Matt is a servant, and it's like that's their surname in front of their last name. Like, I'm Servant Connor for being Matt. That's what every Matt is. It's like, I don't like any of the Matts. I think about it. Like, Matt McCusker is the epitome of that. Of like, well, you see how you can't possibly like that guy, And it has to do with that his name is Matt. Because Matts are, you walk all over them, they're no lie, and they're lower than lying. You can lie on Matts all day. You can lie on the ground and you're above a Matt. No lie. And, and like, I don't have a problem with that. I think that it serves me in other ways. Or whatever. It serves me in some way. It's kind of like, that's the way that I view Matts anyways, is that they're just kind of like, they're like at the back of the pack. It's kind of like a leadership thing, but in a reverse way. When you're always lower than everybody else. But like, I listen to critics, so like, which is something that people praise you for endlessly, is like whatever YouTuber is going for in order to look like a good person. Is like, I listen to my audience, whatever, say shit in the comments, and I will respond to it, or I will respond my next episode, like engaging with the audience and then listening to them and then applying what the audience says. Like, I do that because basically every time somebody criticizes me, it ends up coming out in my podcast. Like, criticizes me in real life for the podcast or just for myself. It comes up a lot, like things that I get criticized for, and it's because I listen to critics, And like I listen to the audience and I do what they say, and like most of the time people are like, "Oh, that's a really great quality to have," and so I'm trying to like appease them, and so then I go back into like it's like not oh shit, like oh no, like that's not like I didn't mean that or something. But it's like, I do mean that and whatever, but I do mean that, I mean, yeah, I do mean that I'm the Antichrist, but only like, it's impossible. I'm just like, it's really the lowest bar possible because it's not a hard premise to follow. It's just like, it's just a nominal thing. Like, oh, I said it. I know that it's like implies a lot of shit, and I'll delete all of that if I'm ever up for SNL or something like that. I'll delete all of these episodes. But I mean, because I'm convicted of it for up to a certain point. Like, but anyways, the Shane Gillis commercial. Yeah, that's why people treat commercials. They get one good one and they're like, oh, everything's funny. So that commercial is like border. But the thing is that people describe that Shane Gillis Post Malone commercial with Peyton Manning, where it's like a barbecue, big like, it's like a fake barbecue party. They're mocking barbecues, sort of. But that commercial happens to be like borderline hilarious because Bud Light created an environment of hilarity. And really, the funny part is that people are so overjoyed about arriving at a barbecue, just like to be accepted at the barbecue. When somebody launched a Bud Light can through their window, like they should be dismayed at that. But people are just so like, it's kind of like a American Pie movies kind of brand of humor where it's like people are just delusionally happy to be at a party. There's like nothing, it doesn't even matter. They're just so happy to be at the party, at the barbecue, to be invited, because it's like there's truth to that, but it's like an environment of delusion and hilarity sort of that they create. But the funny part is like the woman with the beer can launched into her Jello that she's like running over, and like the people running over, and like the funny part is supposed to be Shane Gillis. They gave him all of the good lines, but I just want to talk about this commercial is that the commercial is about Shane Gillis, even though it's a Bud Light commercial. Bud Light is the biggest winner in the commercial because they were able to do a lot of product placement. Like Bud Light is everywhere, and they said Bud Light a bunch of times, obviously, without it being pushy. They're like got Bud Light all over the place. So like that's a really successful commercial for them because they're just able to subliminally say Bud Light to you a bunch of times without you really thinking about it. They're able to divert your attention off of the Bud Light while putting Bud Light all over. So they're the biggest winner of the commercial. But it's like even though they're the biggest winner, that's not what the commercial is about. The commercial is about Shane Gillis, but that's the quality that he has is, but like, I want to say people will describe this commercial as hilarious, or this hilarious commercial when, I'll watch it. I didn't laugh while watching it. I don't know that I even smiled just because I don't laugh at that many things. I mean, it's just like, if you just see it on your phone while you're flipping through, you're like, you see the commercial on your phone for the first time, what am I going to do? Sit there and smile at it if it's not like genuinely making me smile? You only do that for other people when you're in a room with other people. Like, it's important to have a fake laugh, especially in stand-up comedy. It's going to stand-ups, whatever, seeing other stand-ups, you have to have a fake laugh. No, well, you don't have to. You don't have to laugh at them. But it's, I guess if you're a host, probably, you should be fake laughing a lot. Like, you got to develop a fake laugh. It's like, you shouldn't be that all your laughter is genuine. Whether or not you do stand-up comedy or anything like that, you should develop a fake laugh just for public life. Like, probably, I don't know. so that you can laugh at commercials that aren't actually funny, but everybody decided it's socially we're supposed to laugh at the Bud Light with Post Malone. Because the thing is, like, Post Malone is happy in that commercial, not necessarily funny. Peyton Manning is funny. Shane Gillis is lucky, I would say. I'd say that Shane Gillis is lucky. I didn't find it, like I was saying in the episode about the Antichrist, I don't find it hilarious, what Shane Gillis is doing. But people would describe it this hilarious commercial because they forget about that hilarious things actually happen. Because, like, it's not like maybe you chuckled at the commercial or whatever. It's not gut-bustingly hilarious because people forget about that hilarious things do happen. Like, I guess it's kind of rare, but you know how, like, when you're hanging out with your friends and then somebody does something hilarious and you can't stop laughing. Like, that's hilarious. Like, your friends, people in real life, they're able to produce something hilarious. It's because real shit is hilarious. That commercial isn't hilarious because it's scripted. But people will talk about it like this hilarious commercial because they have nothing else besides Shane Gillis. Or like, well, I guess this is hilarity. Or like people are lonely or they're not hanging out. They're not giving enough credit to interpersonal relationships. They want to give it all to celebrities. Like this commercial is not hilarious as somebody wrote it, Somebody wrote it and then gave Shane Gillis all the funny lines. So not to throw shade on him. It's just like, yeah, it's good and it's funny what he's saying, and they gave him funny lines. But he's lucky that they wrote all of those funny lines for him, and he might have written some of them himself. I don't really know. He's lucky to be there. He's lucky to be in the commercial, and he's a Notre Dame fan. Like, he's a lucky person. He's lucky to get where he is. And, like, the thing is that his career started with bad luck because SNL cut him. But now everybody's like, oh, you really, like, Shane Gillis, it worked out for you a lot more that you didn't go on SNL. And that it's like, now you're on Kill Tony and Joe Rogan and doing all this other shit. It worked out so much better for you. Like, he's lucky. Like, he's lucky to be in the commercial because he's not, like, I don't know, he doesn't have, like, a ton of hilarious things to say. But the thing is that, well, like, maybe he does. Maybe he has longevity where he can keep saying, like, mildly funny things like this, like he does in the commercial. But, like, I think that what you see with Shane Gillis in the commercial is, like, I think it's the opposite. I think that he's unlucky. Like, people would say that he's lucky to be in the commercial. I think that in some senses it would have benefited him more to stay with SNL, which is not a take that very many people have, and it's not something I say to be controversial. It's just something that do I believe that more than the other way? I don't know, maybe about 50-50. That, like, I think, honestly, being on SNL might have worked out better for him because he probably could have done Joe Rogan and Kill Tony and still been on SNL if SNL hadn't cut him for saying something racist, because SNL has this ability to take con men and make them real that no other place in the nation has the ability to do. Joe Rogan doesn't make you not a con man. You don't go on Joe Rogan as a guest and, like, oh, at the end of it, you're not a con man anymore. A little bit, because, like, he validates your reality. It's almost like, well, Shane Gillis isn't a con man anymore now for sure because he's on Joe Rogan. So it doesn't really matter either way, I guess. But, like, he could have had both. But SNL definitely makes you not a con man. But Shane Gillis, it's something I'm arguing more, like, he might be more of a sketch comedian. Like, that's where he's funnier. And so SNL could have made him real in the area of sketch comedy and, like, in area he's better in. Because that's what SNL does. It'll take, like, con men and make them better. And by the way, like, con men from the 70s are not better than the ones today because they're all, like, it's all a grift based on, like, popular culture for a lot of them. For a lot of, like, a lot of the SNL cast members, they're just con men because they're not even, a number of them aren't even stand-up comedians. It's like stand-up comedians are con men, but sketch comedians are especially con men. But, like, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, I saw their SNL audition tapes, And like it would never fly today because you would watch their audition tapes, you'd be like, those are just 2-bit con men. Like that's like not good material at all. But because it was the 70s, they weren't used to that yet. But just like con men back then are not better than the ones now. I mean, it's the same with just like comedy in general. Like we get past all of that shit. And I would say the same thing about movies. Like old movies are not better than the ones today. We get better. We get funnier. I mean, you have to move past it because you can't use that same material or whatever. We keep evolving, and I mean that's true. But I just wanted to say, like, it's not like Dan Aykroyd was really John and Jim Belushi or whatever. Who knows? Like the Blues Brothers, as far as I know it, whatever that movie is. I think it's like Dan Aykroyd and one of the Belushis are the Blues Brothers. But as far as I know, it looks like that's just a bunch of nonsense. That looks like a bunch of bullshit. It's gotta be. There's no like what's the funny part? People are like, oh, the Blues Brothers, they show the funny part, it's them like dancing. That's just a bunch of con men crap. But SNL, if you stay in the cast for a couple of years, you become real. And you don't have to be a con man anymore. You made it. Lorne Michaels validates people's realities, makes them real. But the thing about Shane Gillis is that he's kind of like retarded. The thing is that the commercial is about him. He has that kind of quality, like he's special. He's special because no matter what, you're just interested in what Shane Gillis is doing in the commercial. Really, more than anything else anybody's doing, you're watching to see what Shane Gillis does because he has that kind of quality, because he's special. It's because he's kind of retarded. And that's a thing that retarded people have. You have to watch out for them because they might have some control over the narrative because of their, like, the way that they're retarded for some reason. Because they're, like, special, but you're not allowed to let special people... Because imagine if special people had control of the narrative. I don't know. I had a point about it I was thinking about earlier. I can't really remember it now. But so that's all well and good. It's just that when you have somebody like that, where it's like they're kind of just special for, like, the thing kind of becomes about them, you're just questioning. You've got to say that you're wondering what there is at the end of the day. Is there anything at the end of the day with Shane Gillis? Or is it just like he has this quality of specialness because that's the way that that's the way it is with those people. You start asking, like, questions. Like, does that continue? Because you don't, it's like, that's not even real. Like being special like that. We just tend to say that you should get written off for being special. It's a derogatory word. It's a negative. It's something you could criticize for, even though it's like a speciality should be treated with reverence. It's, we find out you're special, we start treating you with negativity most of the time, unless you're somebody who's lucky, like Shane Gillis. But it's just that he's so lucky to be treated that way for being a retarded guy, when it's like most of the time, we just have a lot of questions about somebody like him, because like he is a different kind of comedian that I just wonder, like, are you using up all your luck, or is there something fishy about it, or is like this doesn't last very long? It's hard to tell. It's just like somebody like him should be misunderstood for longer, but his period of misunderstoodness was just like a couple weeks, like a couple months after SNL cut him. Like, it's working out for him way too well. You're like, so he's special. Shane Gillis. And yes. And so so it's kind of something I do out of a sense of duty. It's like somebody should say these things. It's not like I really am trying to be mean or really hate Christians, or I really, because that doesn't make me feel good to be mean. It's just that they're not that nice to me. It's just like, I don't have a problem being mean because I feel like they'll pretend all the time that it's a nice environment. Do Christians or just everybody in the world? Because you're not allowed to be mean, like, see what happens. Like, Ellen, we found out she's mean, and we're like, you gotta get out of here. You gotta go in the garbage disposal now, and you're done. Because we found out that you're mean, apparently is like the worst thing. And so that's a mean thing that I'm doing. To say I'm the Antichrist. It's like mean to my family, maybe. But like, or, it's a mean thing because it's not nice. You're supposed to like accept all the belief systems or whatever. I just have a lot of questions about the nice world. The world of niceness is kind of it's a fake environment. And you wouldn't recognize the fakeness of it if you weren't describing it as like the niceness complex, the nice environment of the world. I think that it's like, because I just have some questions about niceness is why I end up being mean. Because it is mean, the things I do and the things I say. I'm not saying like, oh, look, I'm really nice, actually, which is what I'm saying now. Like, that makes up for when I was mean. I was never mean or whatever. I was mean, I was nice. It's just like, you should be allowed to be both of them. You should be allowed to be secular and Christian. But there are a lot of people in the world that make it this divide, and a lot of people base their lives on the Bible, and the Bible ends with Revelation, and it says like, this ends when the Antichrist comes here. So like, that's their story and that's their fantasy. And so it's like, the Bible is like a big Jewish propaganda book. The Old Testament is Jewish history. And then it ends with it gets centralized into Jesus at the start of the New Testament. It ends with the King of the Jews. And basically, at some point in the future, the New Testament part of the Bible will end with the King of the Christians. But like, then that'll start some new thing. The King of the Christians, I believe, is like the Antichrist, and I don't want to be that or anything. It's just like, I think that there will be a lot of those. So if like I was saying I could give that away to somebody else because I don't want it, like, because that's the way that would work, because it's Antichrist is decentralized versus Christ is centralized. Because at the point that we realize we don't need a centralized figure, we'll be like, oh, we can give the power of the era to a lot of different names. So it'll be like the way that presidents work in the United States. That's the way I think that the world should be run, rather than off of Christ. Like, we have one president, one tyrant the entire time. This is obvious. Like, so this is obvious. We should make it so that it's not the same person every time, because they don't have, so that it's not all the responsibility of one person. Because I say this honestly, I think that I like Christ more than Christians do, to attempt to try to get him off of the cross, or like give him some relief from being the guy responsible for all of the shit all the time. Because in real life, like, it's more like, rest in peace, Jesus. I don't mean to say that like, yeah, now you're done, Jesus. Yeah, let's kill Jesus or anything like that. I mean, like, think about it. It's unethical to keep preserving the memory of this person that isn't alive and isn't here with us anymore. I don't know where he is or whatever. It's unethical to carry on his memory for that long. It's like you're trapping him here. And I believe that it has to do with people that take Jesus and they want to keep him on the cross because it's like a money-making venture. Like, it's unethical, I think, what Christians do. They own 55% of the world's wealth, do Christians. They just have a disproportionate amount of the privilege of the knowledge. I mean, like, But I'm trying to, I'm a man of the people. I'm trying to disperse the privilege to everybody in the world. Everybody should realize they're a Christian, because it's like, by the way, another thing that Christians won't tell you is that they have a mission to make everybody in the world a Christian. So, like, I'm doing their bidding for them. And when I say shit like this, and I just, like, Christians are generally just mean. Sorry, woe is me. I do feel like, but like I just have the right to be mean when I feel like they do criticism, whatever. But I like Jesus more than Christians do, to be like, to try to get him off of the cross, or like be somebody who can go up there, because I don't want to do it forever. Nobody would want to. I don't think Jesus would be very happy with, like, I don't know if his memory being so big here, it's like he's trapped here. And that's really my biggest fear, actually, in real life, and saying I'm the Antichrist, is like, what if you became that and then you're like remembered for, but I believe that it's more like there would be hundreds of them. It would just be in succession. That'd just be an era of decentralizing the Christ figure. But it's like, we really shouldn't run off of one president. But we're not viewing it at a grand enough scale. We have too finite a frame of reference in our individual countries to really look at something from a worldly perspective. Generally, people don't go outside of their country to be like, this is the way it works in the world. Like, you have to have a big enough perspective to be like, say that things are American or whatever. If you live in America, like, if you're good enough to be like, describe things to be American, or like, Americans act this way or whatever. You know, most people don't get to that point, let alone like, oh, this is the way that the globe should view it. And really, like, globally, we should view it as like the way that the globe is run politically. And so far, it's just like, oh, the United Nations is bullshit organization. But it's like, this is bullshit organization. These people are like, we run the world by nominally, by name only, by title, by authorities, by honorary doctorates that we have, qualifications. We run the world. And it's because the world is like so authoritarian. People are like, well, we can only listen to the authorities. And the thing is, like, people claim the side of authority when they're not authorities is the big problem with authoritarianism. It's like, people will be like, well, I'm going to listen to a doctor. They know what they're saying. I'm like, you're not a doctor. But they'll do that with that's what a conspiracy is. They'll do that. They'll say the same thing for science. They'll treat medicine the exact same as science, just by putting it all under authority. That's the problem with authoritarianism. Is that you're like, well, I'm on the side of, I'm in agreement with scientists, doctors, whatever. So people act like they get to dispense that information to other people because they're on the side of doctors. They act like they're doctors. They get to tell you what to do about medicine. Like, well, you have to see these people because I know, because I'm on the side of, it's just of doctors and science. Like, and it's the same with like CNN or whatever. All the anchors on CNN will totally say that's the way that we do it. We're on the side of science. Where they're the authorities of news and whatever. Like, it's just authorities conspiring with other authorities, because that's what a conspiracy is when two what should be completely different groups like science and medicine are in alignment with each other. It's like just not looking at things intelligently, or like not saying that you have to discern between those groups. We're like, oh, those are the same. But anything where it's people are advocating for science and doctoral should be seen as the same, because those are the experts. You're like putting it all under experts. That's a conspiracy, and that's what authoritarianism is. So it's like it makes sense that conspiracy arises as a word that people use a lot. It gets a lot of play because they're kind of just describing authoritarianism, the way that everybody lumps all experts into the as the same experts. So like there needs to be more said about criticism. Like the difference between it's just that like that's partially what I was saying to my family in the episode where I addressed like the way my family reacted to me when I went home for Christmas. I was talking about like social hierarchies are real, and another way of saying that is kind of like that criticism is real. Whereas like people who are above you to criticize you, that's real when people are criticizing you. It's real when you're criticizing other people. They want to act like, because they didn't mention my podcast technically or like say about the Antichrist episode, because they want to pretend that social hierarchies aren't real. Like criticism isn't real. So like when we're talking shit to each other, we're all just like naive idiots about it, or we're like we're not actually talking shit about the thing. But this is the thing about I don't know if it's like Christian people are like this or just a lot of people are like this. The important thing is to recognize that criticism is happening, shit talking is happening. That's real. And that's something that David Letterman did, and like that was his whole thing. Jay Leno maybe did it even better than David Letterman. Jay Leno was like a little bit beyond David Letterman's caliber. But David Letterman is real, and it was cool. It's cool because he focused on criticism, and he's somebody who's like knows that you always have to draw it back to yourself. Like when he'd have a guest on, he's always zeroing in on, like they say an adjective, they're describing something else. David Letterman will treat it like that's something you're projecting about your own situation. He'll hold them to the things they're describing, all of their stories. It's like David Letterman treats it as like that all relates back to you. You're just talking about yourself, because he treats criticism as very real. And the thing is that I think Jay Leno actually also does the same thing, but he goes a step beyond, and it has to be that way because if you look at when David Letterman had Jay Leno on his show to interview him in the 80s, when Jay Leno was still just a comic before he hosted The Tonight Show or anything, Jay Leno was one of the few people that David Letterman just sat there and had no responses for, because Jay Leno ascended David Letterman's level of criticism. But David Letterman, his whole thing is recognizing criticism, and like he's really smart in that respect. And I think that that's what intelligence is recognizing that criticism is real. Just that, like, he took it seriously. Like David Letterman would get offended when you offended him, and he would make that known. Like, wasn't afraid of mentioning that criticism hurt him in some way, and like that's why he's intelligent. I would say that's what makes him smart, is that he would get offended when he was supposed to, and he would offend the other people, but he knew that the argument was an argument and that it was a competition when he'd have a guest on, and he treated it like that, like it was a war of words, and kind of looked at everything like that. Like if he was above the guest, he could just laugh at them the entire time because he knew that his level of criticizing was better than theirs, and that's like his entire dynamic for when the guest was on, or like the value that he brought to TV. And really it's I'd say that his show is the best TV show of all time. The David Letterman whatever shows that he did, just because he was a really great interviewer for that, because he treated the interview so seriously and understood knew what the interview was about, and he got really good guests and he knew who was an important guest and talked to them for a long time. But Yes. So basically, watch out for the Christocracy, for the political, and it's this is what will happen more and more into the future. Is that I think that things will get more Christian, and they'll be more like the news and whoever. I'll explain this at the top of the next episode, but it'll. I think that will be politically, we're going to arrive at that, where it's just kind of like things might be discussed more in this Christian versus secular dynamic, and I feel like you see that happening in the world, that this, it's harder and harder to ignore that, and so that's just kind of, I'm describing that and bringing awareness to that and whatever it is. So thank you for listening. Glad that you tuned in. And I'm signing out now. And that's the end. Good luck and good luck to you. Much love. Bye.